everyone. We are here today with our MC4326 Advanced Social Media and Analytics class for another social media show. I'm really excited to be here with, this is group 6. I can't believe we're already here. We have one more group to go, but we started on X Spaces, then we moved to Instagram Live, and now we're on LinkedIn Live today. And so I'm really excited to be here with this wonderful team. I know throughout these social media shows, we've been talking about different social media conceptual topics, everything from selfies to influencer cultures and so forth. But today we take a slightly different turn. Jackson is first again. I like the I'm first to comment. That's great. Yeah, feel free to use the chat if you're joining us. That's wonderful. So today we're going to be taking a slightly different turn in our conversations, and this is social media designed to deceive. That's anything from misinformation, disinformation, to deep fakes, and potentially even visual disinformation. I'm really excited to be with this team today, Lexi, Brad, Alex, and JBA, and Katie, who is my wonderful graduate assistant. Katie, would you like to say anything before I pass the baton to this team?
Yeah, hi everyone that's watching on live. I'm really excited for Group 6. This is a really awesome group. I know that you guys have a really great show for us in store, and I'm just excited to hear what you guys have. So you guys are going to do amazing. Good luck.
We are very excited for this show, and without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Lexi, who's going to be introducing us to this wonderful social media show. Way to go, team! We're very excited.
Hi, everybody. I'm Lexi, and I'm going to be kicking off our social media show today. Today, we're diving into how social media is designed to deceive. While social media was originally created to connect people and foster communication, it is now evolved into a very powerful manipulation tool and deception. At the core of social media's design, it's designed for algorithms and to prioritize engagement, often at the expense of truth and user well-being. These platforms are structured to keep users hooked by presenting content that elicits strong emotional reactions such as outrage, fear, or excitement. This is often done with tailored posts, clickbait headlines, and sensational imagery that appeal to biases and preconceived notions. So I do have a question for you guys. Do you think social media is more forced on keeping us entertained or keeping us informed? Social media's design also creates feedback loops where likes and comments and amplify certain types of content, often pushing more extreme or misleading ideas to the forefront. In fact, fake news, misinformation, and disinformation spread faster than actual content because they tend to spark more interaction. Have you noticed how your social media feed changes based on what you've liked or interacted with in the past? And how does it affect the content that you see? All right, so Hobby will be kicking us off with the breaking news stories regarding how social media has affected the youth and their mental health. Brad will then follow up with 2 informational readings regarding misinformation on Instagram and the rise of political deepfakes. And lastly, Alex will introduce another breaking news article about the key reasons of why fake news spreads faster on social media.
Javi, you're muted, unfortunately.
I didn't realize I was muted. I'm sorry. Today I'm going to be reading the article, Major Psychology Group says infinite scrolling, other social media features are particularly risky to youth mental health, by Elizabeth Chuck. To summarize that, the AP emphasizes that social media platforms are inherently designed for adults, making them unsuitable for children and young users. Features like endless scrolling and push notifications exploit their vulnerabilities of developing adolescent brains, and it's just these apps are designed for children to keep scrolling and to not get off, so they hooked onto that, which is more susceptible to addictive behaviors and distractions. According to Mitch Prinstein, APA's chief science officer, over half the teens exhibit symptoms of clinically dependency on social media, interfering with essential activities like sleep, schoolwork, and just face-to-face interactions with social life. While some social media platforms have implemented like modest changes, such as Meta's parental supervision tools and usage reminders, the APA argues that the efforts are insufficient. And the organizations suggest a fundamental redesign of social media for younger users and like children, such as disabling addictive features by default. So like they want to implement more parental control on apps like these. The article also builds on like the 2023 advisory to acknowledge the dual nature of social media. It can like provide connection and support for teens facing this stuff, but also exposes them to like risk like cyberbullying, and like this social media opens up for like misinformation and disinformation. Despite recommendations, little regulatory progress has been made, and many platforms have not introduced meaningful reforms. The conversation around this issue is gaining momentum, with states passing laws to limit social media use for minors and high profile books, highlighting the mental health crisis linked to social media. The APA calls for both legislative action and parental involvement, advocating for stricter boundaries in social media use, particularly at night, because they like want to take those phones away so they're not as much, so it won't affect them as much. A question I have for you is like, what role do you think parents, school, and policymakers should like play in addressing the mental health issues, and like how it affects children with the misinformation and disinformation that they see in this world? How would y'all say, Lexi, Brad?
Do you mind repeating that question one more time?
I was just like, what role do you think parents or schools and policymakers should address in the mental health risk for like associated with social media, like with the misinformation and disinformation and whatnot?
I think making sure that you do the research and understanding what the information is that you're absorbing. If it's, affecting mental health, then we maybe need to cater some conversations and, make sure that they are aligning with their values and all things that may align with that person in general. I think making sure you do research in general is just going to be the main source as to help the problems that rely on mental health.
I agree, and with like the misinformation and disinformation, parents need to like keep control of like what their children are doing on these apps if they're allowing them to be on this app. Like 'cause there's all this information that they can get their brains into.
Kind of backing onto what Lexi said, I agree with her. I think that the readiness or the readily availableness of counselors is really big too. I think they kind of have to do their own research to like understand like what kids go through and like what's in like the main feed, because I think there's a disconnect like between obviously like older individuals, teachers, counselors, and the students. They don't really understand like the full climate of like what's going on. So I think like, and also showing that like these counselors, these people that are in charge, like care about the kids and they really care about it. It's not just like, okay, I'm here to do my job. It's more of like, I care about what's going on and like the well-being. I think the more kids you have that are like straight and set, like set well, I think the better the education system is as well. So I think those two things go hand in hand.
I'd just like to take a moment to kind of read the comments that are coming through. I think these are really good statements. So let me go through these real quick. Jackson said, I believe it's mainly on parents. Eric said, I believe that it falls on the parents to monitor what their children are watching. Owen said, I think it's important to acknowledge that it's an issue and provide outlets or support systems for this particular issues. And then Sarah said, I think the parents are the ones who need to monitor their children's apps. And let's see, there's another good one I liked. Candace also said, I think parental guidance is the most crucial part for mental health risks and their child's usage. I think media literacy could possibly be something taught later on in school or from a parent is also important to prevent the harms of misinformation. So all great comments. I really like what everybody said in the chat.
I have a question for Daniel. So I'm curious, do you think that locking down your kids' phones, like, do you think that completely stops that passage of, issues that could happen with phones, or do you think that there's a little bit of a disconnect with just locking down the phone, or does like conversation come with that as well? Because I remember like at least like when I was like young, like my parents would like take my phone and whatnot, and like they wouldn't really like tell me why, and I kind of like I was like upset with them, but in reality they were really trying to protect me, but I didn't like realize it at the time. So yeah, I guess like
Time you were thinking they took my phone.
exactly. It was like 11 o'clock, and my dad would be like, okay, he'd be in my room like to take my phone. I'm like, seriously? But like in retrospect, I can see how like it was a good thing because I needed to sleep and I shouldn't have been on it, and things like that. So I'm kind of curious about that.
I think it's going to take him a moment to jump in here, but I think that this is such an interesting conversation, and I think Candace's point is spot on. I think we need to teach media literacy in elementary school, in high school. We have to be doing that in the curriculum, because if we are not teaching that in the curriculum, we are not going to have a baseline understanding of how to combat mis or disinformation or deep fakes, or this era of extreme visual disinformation that we are about to enter, especially as, I mean, it's already here, but it's going to only amplify with AI. And some of that parents are going to have some handle on, but some of it are not. And so a baseline understanding in a curriculum setting, I think, is really, really important. And then, of course, parents, yeah, they do have this important role as well. So I don't want to underplay that. I just wanted to note this, that it's kind of hard as a parent. Like, I'm always like, how I don't know what this new thing is, and I'm constantly trying to stay up on it. But even their slang, it's like I'm going to Google it. Like, what does this mean? I don't know what you're saying anymore. And Daniel just responded. So
Sorry, I wanted to jump in really quick here. I think that I agree with Candace's comment. I think it is really crucial to have that kind of baseline education in these school systems, because some people, we have to keep in mind that some children and kids aren't fortunate enough to have a strong sense of parental guidance, right? I think that's like a very subjective thing. I had friends growing up and to this day who didn't have that kind of support system that I was lucky enough to have. And so I don't think that roles like this should fall on, just the parents. I think having that combination of education, media literacy, legislation obviously plays a really crucial role in kind of combating misinformation and disinformation. And so I think having a combination of all three of these things is really important.
Yeah, I like what Katie, I like everything that Katie just said. And I want to just kind of add on to that, Katie, that, parental literacy, it really only exists within whatever flow of literacy they already have. So I remember I was a teenager when we got internet in the house, and it was dial-up internet, but my parents didn't know what internet was. It was just this like bundle that came with the phone line, and we got a second phone line after they realized they couldn't use the phone line with the internet. But I mean, for know how to deal.
Okay, I think we lost her for a second, but feel free to continue on, Javi, if you want to, and then I'm sure we'll get Dr. Stewart back in a second.
All right, and just to wrap it up, I would just like my last 2 cents, Candace. Again, like we just need to and like teach it in school, and like the difference to know where misinformation and disinformation go into. But I'd like to give the floor to Brad now, so he could speak about his 2 articles.
Alrighty, and I certainly can get to that. But before I do, I'd like to, or on the previous question we were on, I know, power to the parents and all, but I'm interested in knowing if y'all think we should, or I guess we should take action outside of, the family and relating to kids and social media, because. The other day, I think, I believe the Australian government is floating a plan to ban social media, like outright for children until they hit the age of like 16 or 14 or something. But yeah, I'm interested to know what we all think in that respect. But before we get to the articles, I'd like to start off by defining a couple of terms we've heard a lot. Those being disinformation, misinformation, and a new one, malinformation. We've all heard this a lot, I'm sure, but just one more time. Disinformation is the deliberate and sometimes malicious misrepresentation of information. So stuff that's not true, that people know isn't true, but still say it anyways. And misinformation is more along the lines of, you may have like seen a post that wasn't true, and you believe it, and you go on to spread that. So it's incorrect information that's being like non-maliciously spread. And then malinformation is misrepresented information. So if a person of influence, like a celebrity or a politician, might say something, and then that would and that something is taken out of context and put in like a video on like Instagram or TikTok that misrepresents their actual ideals, that's what malinformation is. And lastly, I'd like to start off with another question. I see all the questions from last time coming in. But I'd like to ask y'all if you can think of a time that misinformation or disinformation was made more credible by social validation. And social validation can be anything from like a trusted celebrity endorsing a certain thing, or it could be as the article explains further, it could be a lot of the reactions to the post being positive. So if there's a bunch of comments on a post saying that it's true and being or socially validating it, that that could continue to push the misinformation. But alrighty, there's. All right, or I'd like to get to a couple of the questions from last time. We think government should stay out of it. Like many things, I feel there will still be ways for some people to access social media and work around the parameters, but it's probably beneficial in some aspects to keep them from social media too early on. Yeah, no, I think that too. But yeah, like if I don't know how different I would have been if I hadn't had a phone or social media until I was 16, but it's too late now, right? But so this first article, misinformation on Instagram and the impact of trusted endorsements on message credibility. The first article examines the influence of social validation of a trusted endorsement and the popularity of a post on the credibility of misinformation on Instagram. So basically, the study measures how endorsements and perceived social validation make misinformation on Instagram more credible. And the article lays out two hypotheses that one of which is supported by its later claim that the presence of a trusted endorsement in an Instagram post containing misinformation positively affects perceived message credibility. So pretty much if someone you trust endorses a post, people are more likely to positively receive that message, even if it's misinformation. And then their second hypothesis is that a bandwagon cue positively influences the perceived message credibility of an Instagram post containing misinformation. And that bandwagon cue is what I was mentioning earlier about like the social validation with comments in Instagram. If I know this is certainly true for me, but if I'm on a post or if I see a post on Instagram and I'm not totally certain it's true. If I open the comments and all of the top comments are people talking about or people reacting to the post being true and that kind of thing, I'm definitely more likely to believe that. And that's what the study was looking for. The study itself was conducted through so participants were asked to rate the level of trustworthiness of first 5 Instagram personalities, including Bill Gates, Oprah, and Ellen DeGeneres. And then they were shown an Instagram post containing a photo of a Galapagos giant tortoise with the headline, Galapagos Islands to ban tourism for 2 years. They were then randomly assigned to some of the experimental conditions, and they saw a post with a very high number of likes with an endorsement from one of the personalities. And in this way, the study used a 2x2 basically like validation between the subject's experimental design. So it was testing for the presence or absence of the likes of the post and the personality's endorsement. And what it found was the number of likes on a post didn't directly or significantly affect how people saw the credibility of the post. The social validation and endorsement of a public celebrity aspect of it, though, is a significant factor in people's perception of a post's credibility. So lastly, I'd like to end with this question. How do y'all think we ought to approach dis and misinformation in this new online media environment we're in? And how should we approach combating mis and disinformation when it's held up by people we trust and the social validation of others?
On that topic, I want to speak about like misinformation from like celebrities and like disinformation. Like we can see on X, like Elon Musk, I personally think he's always spreading like disinformation with like the politics, and he was always spreading like endorsing like Trump. There's nothing wrong with that, but like he was just spreading some disinformation, taking stuff out of context, what of Kamala was saying and whatnot. That I think that's like something of like disinformation.
Yeah, kind of picking back on what Javi was talking about. Like the community guide or the community notes on X, it like consistently like calls him out and other creators out or personalities, people on the app. I think it's really interesting that kind of as time passes, like more apps or other having like these ways to like call out false information or things of that nature. I think it's important to do that as well, because people just see the first thing they read. They read something and then they're like, okay, I believe it now, and they start spreading it. So that's kind of how it starts. So I really support that, like that feature that allows for that to be a thing.
Yeah, I do as well. I think it's been really beneficial for my own relevance because of the fact that like sometimes, yeah, I see things online and I'm like, dang, that's crazy. I had no idea. But with like the little comment below, I'm like, oh, okay, well, maybe that's not true. And then I go and I do my own research and see what we're actually talking about, what the discussion may actually be about. Another thing I will say is like, I don't know, the influence of comments. Like I like how you brought up, like you see the first couple of comments holds influence. I think it holds influence for me in many ways. I mean, positive and negatively. I mean, not just portraying like whether it's true or false. I think like if I see a video and I'm like, oh, this is so cute. And then I look at the comments and everybody's like, how dare she do that? Blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, oh, wait, how dare she do that? So it does kind of influence me in many ways. And it kind of, dissembles my trust a little bit. So I can see how that definitely plays an effect.
Alrighty, yeah, I definitely echo everything y'all said, or I do find it funny that a couple of the comments are along the lines of like, or we should all just, do our own research more instead of, or before spreading, our misinformation. And wouldn't that be nice? But, and with that, I'd like to ask y'all another question relating to our second article. You won't believe what they just said. The effects of political deepfakes embedded as Vox Populi on social media, by Michael Hamler's Tony GLA Vandermeer and Tom Dauber. This is another one of our academic articles. And basically, disinformation has been regarded as a key threat to our democracy by some, and some of which have stated that deepfakes, being the faking of a person's like face or voice through the computer. We've all seen deepfakes, I'm sure. Or before I get more into it, what's do y'all consider deepfakes, or do y'all consider deepfakes and the similar types of disinformation a threat to democracy, as some people and probably some of the people who wrote this article believe? And what's the last deepfake you remember seeing? I remember, or the last ones I really recall were a while ago, and it was mainly on Instagram. But I'd see deepfakes of like Joe Biden and Donald Trump playing like Minecraft together, and or like doing Fortnite on Instagram. And those were obviously fake. But I'm curious if y'all have some other experiences with those. But to continue, we know little about the different types of disinformation or the impact of disinformation disseminated through inauthentic social media accounts of ordinary citizens. So it's basically just we don't know a whole lot about this, and to test the effects of different forms of disinformation in their embedding, the researchers in this study conducted an experimental study in the Netherlands, and through this experiment, they investigated the effects of disinformation relating to deepfakes contrasted to both similar and authentic political speeches, which I'll get into later, and the role of modality, which is textual manipulation versus a deepfake. So a text mis or disinformation versus a deepfake. So that'd be like video or audio or like a photo. And it examines the disinformation's role in embedding on social media. So let me just look at the questions. Okay. Yes. Or can we get Candace's comment up? Yeah, she says she doesn't know about how, or them being a threat to democracy, but she believes that as the technology improves in the future, deepfakes can probably be harmful. And she says this shows that media literacy and the ability to recognize deepfake content is just important as regulating it. And this I completely agree with. And luckily enough, the study itself does find that societal concerns about deepfakes destabilizing democracy are probably exaggerated a little bit, but not that they should be disregarded. Oh yes, and about Owen's comment on the older people falling for fake content on Instagram and social media. I'm not an older person, so I can't really speak to that. But I know my grandparents have definitely fallen for a thing of that or two, and I'm sure y'all can relate to that.
Yeah, I just want to kind of jump in real quick on that one. My grandpa actually recently got scammed by a deep fake phone call. So my grandparents are very, very old. My grandpa is 97 years old. My grandma was in her 80s. And they received a phone call about my brother. And it was like somebody completely impersonating him with an AI voice, saying like, he's in jail, he's in Mexico, they need to pay him such amount of money. Like I think it was like $10,000 cash. They need to meet somewhere here and there. My grandpa he's really old, but he's still in there. So he made sure to ask some questions like, what's your mom and dad's birthday? Or was a place that we went to whenever it was my I think it was like his 50th birthday. Things like that, or not his 50th birthday. I think their 50th anniversary. And that helped like determine, that it wasn't my brother, that it was definitely an AI voice trying to get my grandpa's attention. And unfortunately, it was kind of to the point to where my grandpa fully believed it. I mean, he doesn't know about AI like we do right now. So he definitely believed it and was so willing to give this person like $10,000 cash. So definitely a victim to that. And that was definitely a lesson within my family in general.
What a crazy story. And I feel so bad for your grandfather. But I think that real world example really contextualizes how dangerous it can be if it's not something that we're aware of, or it's not something that someone can sense. And it is affecting real people. It's not just like this social media thing when it's, these AI robocalls trying to scam people. And so that's really disheartening to hear. But just switching the topic a little bit, Daniel says if it's parodies, label it as such, and then it's fine. Yeah, I agree with that. Like if it's a meme, if it's a parody, if it's something like that, if it's labeled, that's fine. If it's not labeled as such, then I think a lot of these comments here, and I'm trying to get to as many of them as I can, are, I think, really spot on.
Now, just a quick interjection. So Lexi talked about how her grandpa got affected by that. Well, actually, last year at the outlets, at one of the stores, which I cannot name, one of the managers was called by the district manager with an AI voice and said, you need to take all the money out of the safe and bring it to this bank and put it in this account. And they were like, don't tell any of the other managers. Like, we're coming in tomorrow. Like, everyone's under investigation. Like, you're the only one that can do this. And she believed them. So she went to the safe. She took out the money, dropped it in that account. Never heard of it. Got fired, under investigation. But it was all because of this AI voice. And this is like a 23-year-old girl. So even though like we can still be young, we can still be, or anybody can be impressionable to those voices, because she was like, it sounded like him. He was saying all the right things, and yet he still made like $8,000 just off that. So I just think it's really interesting.
That's such a good lesson that this is not an ageism problem or a literacy problem necessarily. Like we all know about social media, but the technology extends beyond that, and it's those moments that are really, really important for us to think about. Katie, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, both of those from both of you are awful, and I'm so sorry that happened to your grandpa, Lexi. But yeah, I think I just echo what you said, Dr. Stewart. It's not about ageism. This is a blanketed thing that should apply to everyone, and I think that's such a good lesson. And kind of going back to the comment about it's fine if it's labeled, I do agree with that if it's in the sense of a parody. But when we're looking at a huge scandal like the Taylor Swift deep fake, I think that goes into a completely different territory where we're dealing with really crude images that are harmful to a person's reputation. And whether it's a celebrity or not, I don't think that distinction should necessarily matter. But I think that's kind of when this violation of privacy should kind of go further into legislation.
I would agree with that. Daniel has a comment, which is, if I don't recognize the phone number, I don't answer, let them leave a voicemail, which I think is a common sentiment. A lot of us do that, but they're getting very good at using like different phone number changers. So they can actually switch their phone number. So these kind of scams become more and more advanced and more seamless looking as time goes on.
Yeah, and I don't know if you've noticed, but I definitely have. When I get an unknown phone number call me, sometimes it'll say like scam call or charity call or, unknown caller. I don't know. It has like little notes now that I definitely really appreciate, and I will let it go to voicemail. And it is indeed a scam call or a charity call. So I really appreciate those as well.
Yeah, I kind of forgot about that. Like the phone is marking the messages as well, which is great. I wonder if it's like known actors, known bad actors.
Alrighty. Well, great discussion. I think we all have established the threat and how deepfakes and that those kinds of mis and disinformation are very present in our daily lives. Yeah, I've not been deepfaked or scammed yet, but they did get my Facebook account hacked, so we are there. But back to the article and the experiment that they ran. So for this experiment, or this experiment in the Netherlands, to create the stimuli, they got a real speech of a Dutch politician. His name is Sybrand van Heersma Burma, which I will not be saying. So this politician is the former leader of the Dutch Christian Democrats, and he's known for rather conservative views on issues such as immigration and national politics. So for the experiment, the manipulations were the result of attempting to strike a balance between plausibility and extremity. So that means not changing the political orientation of the politician and balancing that with making the politician look bad by adding an extreme component to his statements. And this is measuring how we perceive the credibility of messages and media when it's mis or disinformation like this. Crucially, the politician used in the disinformation conditions is not considered a right-wing populist, but his overall ideology and rhetoric can be manipulated and placed out of context to make his existing conservative viewpoints more extreme. And, I'm sure we can relate that sort of to the politics back home, and misinformation and disinformation is it doesn't discriminate. It affects both sides, I'm sure. But the deepfaked version of the politician's speech obscenely stated that immigrants are enabled to increasingly influence our country's their country's traditions, and that people from backward societies are often more inclined to commit violent crimes such as rapes and robberies. So that was the disinformation element of the politician that some of the participants were shown. And then for the textual disinformation, the respondents were shown a news-like article about a statement recently made by the politician. And those manipulations consisted of short articles that had or not a misattributed quote, but an out of context quote from the politician. And finally, so the study's main findings indicate that while some people do find deepfakes less credible than authentic news on the same topic, so on average, people are able to spot it and find it less credible. Deepfakes are not more persuasive than textual disinformation, however. So the difference between an audio or a visual deepfake, or which is disinformation, versus it being text, doesn't really have a bigger impact one way or the other on how people perceive it. Although the study did find that disinformation has effects on the perceived credibility and the source evaluations of people who tend to agree with the stance of the disinformation's argument. And what that means is when people, or this is talking a bit about confirmation bias. So when people encounter disinformation, if they already adhere to the worldview and opinion that disinformation is promoting, they're more likely to accept and go along with it without, giving it more thought and doing all their own research, as we would all love to do. And those findings suggest that the strong societal concerns on deepfakes' destabilizing impact on democracy are not completely justified. So ultimately, while deepfakes are definitely a scary form of mis and disinformation, there's a lot you can do by faking audio or video of someone. It's not anything earth-shattering to our democratic institutions, but it's definitely something we should keep a watch out for. And as we end the discussion on our articles, before I turn it over to Alex, I'd like to ask another question. So repeated exposure to disinformation and misinformation could have long-term effects on a person, as the article hypothesizes. And how might it affect our perceptions of celebrities, politicians, and other people of influence? And how do you think we ought to approach that in this day and age? Yeah.
So the comments will take a second to load in.
Yeah, I know.
But just to comment on that a little bit, you can see how some celebrities are swayed by this false information, and their views are essentially like created through that false information, and then they go on to spread it. And it's just really interesting how like different people can be susceptible in different ways. Not to say that it's a knock on how smart they are or their cognitive ability, but it's really interesting to see, like, let's say a celebrity that you look up to or you've watched for a long time, and then next thing you know, they're spreading this information. You're like, how did you come to that? But the thing is, with repeated, when people see things repeatedly, when they see it very often, they come to believe it. Even if it's not true, they're like, well, it's there. How can it not be true? That I think that's a really big issue. Like when you see things so often, you just come to believe, or you hear things are spread. You're like, yeah, that makes sense. And then when someone tries to tell you, like, that's not actually true, like, have you done your own research? Have you actually seen it? You're like, no, there's no way. It's just, it kind of creates that tension there. It's like, oh, like you didn't realize that you had it wrong in the first place. And a lot of people are too stubborn to like admit that they were wrong, or like admit that that's not the case. So I just think it's really interesting.
It can be. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Or yeah, sorry, Dr. Stewart, you asked for my question again. My question was to y'all. So the article believes that repeated exposure to disinformation and misinformation, like the deepfakes and whatever you might come across on whatever social media you use, but for this it's Instagram, it could have long-term effects on us mentally and how we, interact with all that stuff. How does that affect our perceptions of celebrities and politicians and people in influence and of power, and how ought we approach that in this digital day and age?
What do the rest of you think? I'm curious. Well, we're giving people a minute, and maybe I'll bring Katie up to the stage as well. How does it affect our perceptions? Lexi, what do you think?
I think repeated exposure to it should bring us more awareness. I think the more you see it, the more you can understand the patterns of what mis and disinformation may be. Along with maybe if you're on other social media platforms, if you're looking up news websites or watching news streams, I mean, you have to make sure that the information aligns. So I think the repeated exposure is just going to be more practice for us to make sure that we are doing our due diligence and doing the research that we need to be doing. I think the bottom line is going to be research, making sure that you do double check your sources and make sure it is relevant. As far as our perceptions for people of influence, like celebrities or influencers or things like that, I mean, they hold a really big voice. They hold a very powerful voice to many people. One may think, oh, this person's a complete idiot. One may completely idolize that person. So no matter what your visual representation is of that person or what your perception is of them, you just need to make sure that what they're saying is accurate. Regardless of who you are, you could be a complete genius, or you can be, somebody at a lower level of knowledge. And no matter what, I think there should be research done.
Thank you, Lexi. Really great points. Katie, do you want to jump in at all?
Yeah, I like this comment from Jackson that says it breeds irrational skepticism. And I think that's so true, because when we're thinking about repeated exposure to misinformation, disinformation, things like this, I also think we have to think about that it increases on our side as consumers the sense of vulnerability, right? And the sense of manipulation. And so when we're talking about, like, Lexi, your grandfather, how are we gonna mitigate that, and kind of in the future, if we keep on being exposed to these things in such like high contents, how can we kind of help that exposure be lessened in a way? And I'm not sure what the answer is to that, but that's what I immediately thought of when you asked the question, was just this sense of increased vulnerability.
I think under what Lexi, I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Under what Lexi said, I also agree with, like, it builds, like, now we know what to look for in, like, information. Like, when I see things on Twitter, like, of information, like, updated, like, this is newsworthy, I'll believe it for 2 seconds, and then I'll, like, click it, and then, like, say, like, a comment under it, or, like, I'll go to the comments and be like, oh, this is so fake, you got me. But, like, I don't know it until I check the comments, and now I know to check the comments, or, like, read a little bit more ahead of that, so I don't get misinformation or disinformation, so I know what to look for now.
Now, a key problem, which links exactly to what Lexi was saying, is that the more influential someone is, the less likely we are to fact check. And that means that even if they say something that is not true, we are more likely to believe them. And that once we believe them, we're far less likely to change our mind after. So, I mean, there's like another layer that I think this article misses, which is so fascinating. But I think it's such a great conversation. So thank you for that.
If only we were all more responsible, right? No, but that was a great discussion, and with that, I would love to turn things over to my group member. Okay, it doesn't matter. Alex, take it away.
You're muted.
I was muted. All I said was, how's it going, guys? My name's Alex. But anyways, let me walk you guys through real quick. Just hear me out. Close your eyes for a second. Imagine this. You're scrolling through social media, come across a post with a shocking headline. Maybe it says something like, scientists discovered chocolate cures all diseases. It's tempting, right? How many of you would hit share before even opening the article? Why do you think we're so quick to spread information online, even if we're not sure it's true? So, with that in mind, today we're exploring a groundbreaking study from USC that digs deep into why fake news spreads so easily on social media. Spoiler, it's not just about gullible people or political bias, it's about habits. Habits shaped by the platforms we use every day. Social media isn't just a neutral space for communication, it actively shapes the way we think and act about it. So, what's the main issue? The USC study shows that social media platforms Reward systems that push us to share content that gets attention. Likes, shares, comments are all like a digital high five, right? They make us feel good about what we're sharing, even if the content could be misleading. Over time, this reward system trains us to prioritize speed and engagement over accuracy. I think that's the biggest part of it. So, raise your hand if you ever shared a meme or video or headline without checking if it was true. Did you ever feel bad about it later? Yeah. At the time, maybe it didn't seem like a big deal. I've done it too. I've sent, this article like, oh my gosh, this happened. Next thing you know, I find out that's not the case. So, this isn't just a problem for one group of people. The study found that even people who are politically savvy or have strong critical thinking skills can fall into this habit. It's not about intelligence or education. It's about the addictive nature of social media. These platforms are designed to make us share first and think later. Again, I see eye to eye with that because I want to be the first to tell my friends this. Like, oh, I found this out. I want to be the first to say it. And then it's like, you're silly because it's wrong. It's like,
I know during COVID, I definitely shared a lot of misinformation because I was just so quick to like the new breaking news. I was like, oh, this is this is airborne. It can get my dog affected. Like, I don't know. I was so quick to just kind of get scared over some things. And then, of course, I had to take a dial back and kind of do my own research and make sure that those things were actually true.
Yeah, that's a great point. Now, let's think of an example, right? Remember those posts about the dress, the blue or the gold dress or the black, that. Imagine that kind of viral momentum, but applied to fake news story. Why do you think we're drawn to things that spark controversy or strong emotions? Is it curiosity, or do you guys think it could be something deeper? Now, to go back to the study, one of the study's most interesting findings is the role of habitual sharers. These are people who post and share all the time, often without thinking. You know them, the people that your Snapchat, like they just click, 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 like there's just so many things there, right? They're not intentionally spreading fake news to these people, but their behavior disproportionately amplifies this misinformation. This shows just how small habits can lead to big consequences. They may not think it's a big deal. Next thing you know, it's blown out of proportion. That's kind of how that happens. So I want you guys to just think about your own social media habits. Do you find yourself scrolling and just sharing on autopilot? What could you do to slow down and verify the content before you share it? I think that's a very important thing to think about. So while you guys think about these questions, let's talk about what can we do? The USC researchers suggest that the solution isn't just about educating users. It's about changing the platforms themselves. Imagine if social media rewarded accuracy as much as it rewards virality. What if posts marked as true by fact checkers were given a boost in the algorithm while fake ones were suppressed? Now, question for y'all. Would y'all support a system like that? And do you think people would trust these fact checkers, or would they see it as censorship? What are the challenges in making something like this work? And then I'll throw another question out to you guys. I know I'm throwing a couple out there. But again, on X, my favorite platform, I call it Twitter still. Besides the point, a lot of people still see that as like censorship. They see it as it's not free speech. They're like, oh, like you're trying to censor me by saying that's not true. I think there's a big disconnect there because a lot of people see it that way. So I'm just curious as to how you guys see that, if you would, again, support a system like that. And going on to that, this isn't just a theoretical issue. Fake news can have real-world consequences, from swaying elections to spreading harmful health advice. Kind of from what Lexi was saying, during the COVID-19 pandemic, misinformation about treatments and vaccines caused confusion and fear. It was a lot of fear-mongering in there, right? Social media isn't just a mirror of our society. It's shaping the way we see and act in our world, in our society, right? In our communities. So I'll throw another question out there. Can you think of a time when you saw fake news cause real-world harm? How did it make you feel? Did you have any emotions? Do you feel like you could have done something to prevent it? So, all in all, in conclusion, what can we take away from this? First, I think it's important to recognize the power of habits. Platforms may nudge us in one direction, but we choose to slow down, think more critically, and verify the information before sharing it. I also think it's important for a push for systematic change. Social media obviously isn't going anywhere, but we can control how we interact with it, how we go about that. And last question for y'all. Next time you see something shocking or emotional on social media, what's your first move? Will you share it immediately, or will you pause and ask, is this accurate? Most importantly, How can each of us help to fight the spread of misinformation? Yeah. Curious
So
as to what you guys think.
good. So good. Is this the study? USC study reveals the key reasons why fake news spreads on social media. Okay, I'm going to share it on the LinkedIn page so people can jump in. If you're in the LinkedIn chat, I want you to answer this question. Can you think of a time fake news caused real life harm? And maybe one or two of you can answer while we're giving them a second to respond. Oops, sorry, I didn't mean to remove myself.
So I'm trying to think of something, but like
No
I
problem.
feel like we see it like all the time, like when people believe this fake news and they start spreading it and it causes more harm. Like they're like, oh, you need to go do this like now, like, or you're gonna like, I don't know. There's just always so much like to spread and people don't really look into that and it's just harmful to others.
Yeah, or I also can't really think of um or any fake news that had like a real world effect that I saw, but I'm probably pretty removed from, you know, a lot of the effects that the disinformation would be about. But on your point on like how we combat mis and disinformation, or I don't really like share stuff a lot, but when I did use social media, um, I wouldn't or whenever I saw what I considered mis or disinformation, the only thing I really did was like, uh, you know, go to like the little three dots and then press do not recommend or do not, or yeah, like don't recommend in my feed anymore. And I feel like ultimately that's kind of one of the only things you can do as a user on social media. Because like reporting, I feel like doesn't really do anything, and I don't want to go around reporting every single thing. But yeah, I don't know. I honestly don't think there's any like as an individual, there's not much you can do to combat mis and disinformation other than just ignore it or get off social media, which I ended up doing. But yeah,
I think
that's
some
my
harm,
piece.
like an example would be like COVID-19, like when people, like Lexi was saying as well, like she was sharing information, like it had been like harmful to others, or like when they're getting their vaccine, people were saying that it was bad for you. And that's just like you have to do your own research in order to believe that. But people were spreading it, saying it wasn't good. Like how can they just make up a vaccine in 2 days and things like that? And that could be harmful to others, and like more people could be prone to getting sick quicker. And that's like a good example of fake news being spread and
I
being.
think Candace's example is also very good and very recent. And I think that this particular example really caused like mass hysteria in our community in a way that didn't need to necessarily happen, right? Because it turned out to be completely false. But I mean, how scary. And I think that COVID-19, a lot of people are coming up with that, but just doing your research and due diligence and all of that. But I agree with, I think it was Brad who said, like, I'm not going to go around flagging everything. Me neither. Like, I'm just not. Like, that doesn't make the internet an interesting place for me to be. But I also think we need to think about how could we make a better internet. And that's what I really love about Alex's comment. Is like, what if the platforms were required to amplify content that was true, that was accurate, that was credible? Like we have such a warped sense of what is amplified in the algorithms right now, and we allow that to just exist in the way it is. But I mean, there must be a better way. So thank you for that, Alex.
Of course, and also like a big part of that USC study was that like social media does reward like engagement. So people engagement farm all the time, and they get the likes and they get the shares and they get the comments, and people make money. And now people make money off of X, and they're monetized everywhere. But yeah, they get that sense of this is good. So when people get that money, they get that validation. They're like, I'm not what incentive do I have to stop? And people's moral high ground doesn't really come into play when it comes to that. I mean, there's been so many. I'm on X, obviously, as I've said, and I'm really into soccer, and all these like big like soccer accounts, they've all been like sponsored by different like gambling ads. So people will just post like these random stats, these random things that people said with this gambling ad, just so they can get these like all these engagements, and it's just engagement farming, and it doesn't matter if it's true or not. It's misleading. So I just think it's really, I think it should be a thing to reward the truth as opposed to just like, what people see and like.
Well, the other thing is that we have this high influencer culture across these platforms now. It used to just be kind of located in lifestyle, and it's not anymore, as we've been discussing throughout the semester. And so what ends up happening is that sensationalism is a way to amplify the algorithm. It is a way to gain visibility. So when they're rewarded monetarily through views, through followers, through likes, through engagement, it just sends the signal that the more sensational is what they should be doing on an ongoing basis as well.
I just wanted to read Owen's comment out loud because I felt like this was really relevant to what I recently saw as well. He said, I saw Keith Lee got a sushi restaurant shut down due to a video of his food showing potential worms/parasites in his fish without actually confirming that the fish was affected that way. And I think that is also a very interesting topic because I did indeed see the video and I was definitely grossed out. It took me a few minutes to kind of see the little worms sticking out. But it's just sad. It's just sad that that video got the restaurant shut down for possibly misleading information. I mean, I think they're, unfortunately, with the internet, it's all happening in real time. And so it's kind of hard to kind of dial back and, put the restaurant in good light from this point moving forward. So I think it's important that they do their research before necessarily moving forward on a negative foot, but it's kind of hard to do because social media is in real time.
Kind of from what Lexi said, I have seen the video, and the interesting thing is there's so much like controversy, so much commentary on it. Me personally, I didn't think it was a worm. I thought it looked like it, and as a result, yeah, the restaurant did get shut down. So whether or not it was misinformation, if that's what it was, then it's really unfortunate that it can affect, because there's so many eyes are watching. People pay attention and notice all types of things. I would have never noticed that. I'm just like, oh, he's eating sushi, But it's also like when you have such a big audience, people realize those things, like even the small things like that.
And now moving away from the parasites, now that we've cemented that image in everyone's heads, where do we go next?
All right, so that pretty much concludes our segment. To wrap things up, we've explored several important aspects of how social media impacts both of our mental health and the spread of misinformation. Javi highlighted the potential dangers of features like infinite scrolling, which can negatively impact youth mental health. And Brad expanded on ways that misinformation is spread with a closer look at Instagram endorsements and the rise of political deepfakes. Alex introduced us to a USC study shedding light of why fake news is so easily shared across social media platforms. Together, these insights show how deeply social media influences our lives, often in ways we may not realize. As we move forward, it's crucial that we stay aware of these issues, engage critically with the content we consume, and advocate for more responsible design and usage of these platforms. Thank you guys for your attention, and we hope this presentation has provided valuable insights into the complex relationships between social media and how it's designed to deceive.
Woohoo! We are so proud of you. That was such a good show, and I learned so much, and I thought that the examples and little experiential moments were really, really beautiful. So thank you, and very, very good job, Team 6. We're so proud of you. Katie?
Yeah, good job, Team 6. Y'all did so great. It was so engaging. I had such a fun time watching you guys as a team interact with each other. I can tell that a lot of hard work went into this. You guys were super prepared, and I had a really fun time watching it. So good job. I'm proud of you guys too.
Yeah, I had so much fun. I think I wasn't expecting to have a good time, but like more just an informative time, but you made it engaging. So thank you for that. Really, really well done. Everyone in the chat is telling you you did an amazing job. You did do an amazing job. We're really, really proud of you. So have a wonderful weekend. We will be back on Zoom on Monday. We have our final show on Wednesday, and then it is Thanksgiving break. So I hope you have a wonderful, safe weekend, and we will talk soon. Bye, everyone.